Alright, so our next step is going to be to start wiring up our flight controller here. So we're going to go ahead and get our 5 volt in and out wired up. Now these go right here. There's a ground and a 5 volt port. So we'll go ahead and use these wires that we already set up for this. Alright, so we've got our 5 volt wired up. The next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and run wires for our little PIZO buzzers. Now again, I'm not sure if these are going to fit, but we'll go ahead and put the wires down anyways and kind of see what happens there. And so there's our 2 leads for our PIZO buzzer. These are really useful if you actually crash your quad out in the field. It's surprisingly hard to find these little guys out there. So we're going to go ahead and put just a little bit of heat shrink on either end, and then we'll solder on the actual buzzer itself to these guys and get it shrunk over so that that's done and ready to go. So here's our PIZO buzzer. PIZO, I don't know what you call it. Tin these guys up. I like to actually grab a little bit of extra wire when you're stripping these here. And we've got a PIZO buzzer soldered on there pretty well. So we'll go ahead and put the heat shrink on. You can see it kind of pulls over these little tabs here. So we've got the buzzer and the 5 volt soldered onto the board. So now this guy should be booting up and we're ready to solder our ESCs on and run our wire from the 5 volt out to the receiver. So the next thing we're going to do is run our ground and VBAT wires over. So now these guys will actually give you your voltage monitoring off of your PDB. So we just want a direct signal off your PDB. So we'll use a little bit of silicone wire here. So there's our positive. Let's find a length for our negative. There's our leads for our VBAT. Now this is going to give you voltage monitoring through your FR Sky Tyrannus. It'll send you a little bit of information about your battery levels and that sort of thing back down. And you can set up alarms on your radio to actually call out when your battery is low and that sort of thing, so you don't have to use those loud, annoying buzzers. And there's our negative. Alright, so we got voltage battery wired up. So the next thing that we're going to do, since we already have these wires here, is go ahead and put our 5 volt power to the board in. Now that these go over here on your channel 6. You've got signal plus minus, so we're going to start from the inside out. So go ahead and tin these pads. Positive on there. And they're negative. So now if we go ahead and power up the quad, we should see that our naze is turning on properly. Make sure that if you do this like this, you don't have anything touching, if any parts are kind of dangling loose like I've got here. So now we do have power to the naze board, so that's good, and it's already been flashed, so all the lights are blinking and it's ready to go. So we're going to go ahead and wire up our ESCs. We'll start working on those. Now, it's starting to look like we've got something of a rat's nest growing here on our quad, but that's fine. All of this will actually get tucked inside of the quad between the PDB and your FC, and there's not any exposed bare wires in here, so it'll all be fine. In just a couple of short steps we'll get to there, and then everything will start looking much more clean. Obviously our video wires and stuff are still going to route through the quad, but for what we're looking at right now, everything is pretty clean. So we're going to go ahead and start running our ESC signal wires here, and then we've just got a couple more steps and the flight controller will be good to go after this. So for your ESCs, you run your ESCs over to these pads over here. You have both a signal and a ground. The signal is the white wire and the ground is the black. A lot of people will a lot of people won't run their ground wire. I've seen some funky things happen in the past. It's not something that happens every time, but just to be safe, I've always just gone ahead and run the ground wire. So now you have your pads right here for your ESCs, and they go in order 1 through 6 towards the bottom. Now we've got our power wired up into the number 6 because you can power the FC off of any 5-volt coming into one of these ESC pads here. So your motor order actually goes 1, 2, 3, 4 on clean flight. I don't know why they didn't just go clockwise or stick with some of the older schematics, but make sure that you order your ESCs, or make sure you wire your ESCs into the right ports at this point. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. We'll put our, I'm going to start from motor 4 and go backwards because then I'm working my way up and then my soldering iron isn't, or these wires aren't getting in the way of my soldering iron. So now I also will do the signal wire and then the ground wire for each of these in the reverse order. So we're going to grab motor 4 here. Now this is, I'm only doing this backwards because, or in the reverse order rather, because of the way that I have everything laid out and sitting on my desk right now. If it makes more sense to you to do it in order, and if that just kind of works better for you, go ahead and do that. This is just kind of what's convenient for me at the time, or at this point in time. So there's our signal wire. Oh, nope, just kidding. Alright, so there's our signal wire. Now when you're tinning these wires, if you actually sort of let the solder drag off the end and come to a pointy tip, it's very, very easy to thread these in. I like to do that because then you can get them through these through holes much simpler. Kind of give yourself that needle nose point. Really wish that more ESCs would start coming with the silicone wire attached to them. I've been considering stripping them off and using my own signal wires, but okay, so there is your signal and your ground for one ESC. If we kind of zoom in here to give you guys a little bit better view. Dun, 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 dun. Slowest zoom ever. Alright, so there you go. You've got your signal on your leftmost pad. If you're looking at the bottom of the board here, it's got this little signal icon, and then you have your ground out on the outside. Now they're already powered by the power distribution board, so you don't need to run anything to the center pin or the center row of power. That's just for when you want to power something else off of this, and we're inputting our 5-volt power onto the channel 6 here. So that was motor 4. It's on number 4. So now we're going to do 3, 2, 1, and we'll speed that up just so you guys don't have to watch me solder there. Alright, so that's all of our ESCs on and wired up. Go ahead and give them all a nice small tug just to make sure that they're in there securely. Nothing was just sort of pretending to be secure. And then if we power up our quad now, we should hear our ESCs do the full arming sequence. Now, the quad's not gonna arm, but we do already have Betaflight flashed onto our board from before we actually started soldering onto it, so we should hear the 2 series of chimes. There we go, so they're obviously out of sync. We need to do that when we get to the software configuration, but that's good. All 4 ESCs did arm and do their post sequence, so that's a good sign. So the next step is going to be wiring up our X4R. So we'll go ahead and depin this and get that wired up in the next video.